They would tell the individual that usually talks the longest that we're running behind. I would be remiss. I'm not the only change maker in Southeast Tennessee or otherwise the greater Chattanooga region. There are a lot of champions in this audience that have been all partners as part of that change. Like our keynote speaker, I would say I'm a good example of mixed use. Still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. And I also strive to be exotic. So I think he left us with a lot of messages. But today I have 3 goals. One is to bring you all up to speed on our strategic regional planning initiative in the greater Chattanooga region, known as Thrive 2055. And so I'm going to bring you up to speed on that. I'm also going to talk a little bit about our partnership on the Tennessee Roundtable, tools that we've been able to share with each other to better train our local governments, our local elected officials, and our communities about livable communities, and then some things to look forward to in the future. So you might say, visioning and strategic planning is not new to the greater Chattanooga region. Karen Hunt knows that, so does Greg. There are a bunch of people in this room that know. We started visioning long before visioning was cool. Cumberland Region Tamara started looking at forces and trends long before that was cool and that there was a great dialogue going on about it. But you might ask the question, why now? Why again? Well, as you all know, Chattanooga was selected by Volkswagen for a huge capital investment and more than 2,000 jobs. At that same time, what Volkswagen said was, all things being equal in an economic competitive world, a site, incentives, the whole 9 yards, the intangibles became tangible. They talked about the redevelopment of the riverfront. They talked about the culture, the heritage, the arts, the assets, the quality of life. That is the final deciding factor that Stefan Jacoby talked about from the pirouette of the Hunter Museum about what eventually convinced Volkswagen to make that investment in the greater Chattanooga region. So there you see it's Chattanooga. And on the heels of that announcement, additional investment came. And since 2008, there's been over $4 billion announced. That's a great thing. That's Alstom. That's Walker Chemie. That's Amazon. But with that comes a lot of change. And people want to debate all the time about, is it growth? All right, let's just don't call it growth. Let's call it change. $4 billion, over 2,000 jobs. All kinds of growing pains for the school system, additional pressures on the infrastructure, crumbling roads, aging infrastructure. All of these issues begin to come to the forefront about how do we as a region start to deal with those issues. Now, if you think people are crazy about strategic planning initiatives, our Thrive initiative is actually in 3 states. It's a tri-state regional planning initiative. 16 counties, 79 municipalities, almost 6,500 square miles, and we currently have about 149 people per square mile, and the question might be why. Well, Chattanooga is the center of this regional economy. You can see that we have the interstate system that brings workers and commuters into the greater Chattanooga region day in and day out. It is absolutely incumbent that we talk to each other. We share the same drainage basins. We share the same air sheds. We're looking at water quality issues. There is no way that these issues can be looked at in individual county lines or even in individual state jurisdictions. We have a past. We know what our past is, and somebody mentioned Charles Bone as being Walter Cronkite. Well, let me tell you, Chattanooga was on his list in 1969. Talk about CBS National News and designating Chattanooga and the region as one of the dirtiest cities in the world. This was due to industrial blight, horrible air pollution. But visioning works, folks. Here's the same corridor today. Again, change can be absolutely debilitating when it's done to you, but it can certainly be exciting when it is done by you. This is the Walnut Street Bridge corridor today as it exists. 40 years ago, we didn't even have the completion of the I-75 corridor. 40 years ago, people weren't rafting on the Ocoee River in Polk County, Tennessee. Today, over 300,000 commercial rafting people coming to that vista for that tourism, and the home of the '96 Olympics. We didn't have computers. We didn't have the internet, much less the thought process of a gig city. And for those of you that don't know, gig city happens to be the fact that the Chattanooga's Electric Power Board overlaid the fastest fiber to the home on top of their smart grid, and today has the gig, 1,000 megabytes of internet speed. And you talk about an attractor. Ask the question why. Here's a challenge. This is our Tennessee-Georgia state line on a state corridors on both sides. There is no way that this challenge can be approached without sitting down and talking with each other. Lots of partners, folks. Our initiative's a little bit different from the standpoint of there's 3 segments that make up our partnership. We have public partners, City of Chattanooga, Hamilton County, the Southeast Tennessee Development District, the Regional Planning Agency that acts as the TPO for the Greater Chattanooga region. We have philanthropic partners. It was actually our foundations, Benwood, Lyndhurst, McClellan, and the Greater Chattanooga Community Foundation that gave the first $1 million toward this strategic planning initiative. And we have private partners represented by the chambers throughout the region, the Chattanooga Chamber, the Greater Dalton Chamber, and the Cleveland-Bradley County Chamber that have got private industry to the table to lead and drive this strategic planning initiative. This is what our planners, we love these types of examples. We have a coordinating committee that's represented by those 3 entities, public, private, and philanthropic partners that are driving the process. We have a lot of working groups, and we're into the P's in our working groups. You'll hear that a lot. We like those alliterations, paths, prosperity. You'll see that a lot. You'll see the working groups. The backdrop is the public. There's lots of public input into this process. It comes in the form of the working groups. It comes in as part of the coordinating committee. We have one paid individual, and she's here, Bridget Massengill, who gets up day in and day out thinking about this process. The rest of our partners are volunteers with the exception of our consultant team that has been put on board. We'll do this fast. There's our working groups, folks. People, prosperity, past and place, the built environment, the infrastructure, the economic prosperity. We've been really crazy and we've been really hit with a lot of public input. It's a different world today, not only social media, but we've done something called meetings in a box. And basically you can go and get your little work program and go to your Sunday school class, to your neighborhood, to any small group that you have at the coffee shop or wherever your venue is, your high school class, and you can actually facilitate a meeting in a box about what you value most in the region and where you'd like to see the region go. And then if that wasn't crazy enough, we just recently completed input incubators throughout the entire region, where literally hundreds, thousands of people came, looked at issues that had been framed by the working groups and provided their input on things that they would like to see happen in the region within the next 40 years. Ultimately, what's it about? Well, folks, it's about an action plan, and make no mistake about it, it is about economic prosperity, and it's about jobs, and it's about planning for a vital, viable, competitive region where people want to live, where they want to play, where they want to work, and where they want to invest. Some of the things that have come out of our partnership and collaboration on the roundtable, the Sustainable Roundtable. First and foremost, Cumberland Region Tomorrow had a wonderful quality growth toolbox that they put together a number of years ago. When local planning assistant in the rural communities actually came to the development district and our staff began providing technical assistance to those planning commissions, we wanted to start training them on quality growth, how to make places, how to think about things. And Cumberland Region Tomorrow provided their resources and their toolbox to do that. We've literally taken all of our rural planning commissions through that training process so that they can start asking these questions that need to be asked as a region. In addition to that, we've had some great partnerships. This one's with TDEC. This is pretty simple, folks. This is actually a green infrastructure handbook that we funded for local governments. As planners and people that do this all the time, we take things for granted. We think everybody looks at the same things that we're looking at. This is how to take that resource known as water that can adversely impact your community and start thinking about new ways in which to incorporate it. In site plans, in green roofs, in bioswales, in permeable surfaces. Let these folks start thinking a little bit differently about how they might be able to handle some of these issues that face local governments day in and day out. Lastly, one thing I wanted to announce today is that through our partnership on the Roundtable, Bridget and others have collaborated with the National Association of Development Organizations, and I'm happy to announce that there will be a national publication put together on these best practices and regional planning initiatives throughout the state of Tennessee in each grand division that are allowing us to plan for livable communities day in and day out. Thank you for the opportunity.